Hey guys, it's me, Yaya Diamond. What's up, peoples? How you doing? It is a great day, and I'm so very excited to be here. I know I reverted back to that, but I just can't think of anything else to say except I'm just so very happy to be here and so very happy to have my next guest on the show. I am telling you right now, he is an amazing author, but he makes me hungry with this next book. I am not kidding you. There's just so many different things in this book and so many different cultures in this book that I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I am so very sorry. I'm literally hungry right now. But I want to welcome to the show, and I want to make sure I say this right because he has a book, and the book right now is called, and I'm going to put this up on your screen. It's called Eat or Be Eaten by Dr. Rick Bean or Bine. I'm not really
Bine.
sure. Bine. Thank you so much for being
Mhm.
here. Thank you so, so much. Awesome. So, the first thing I want to ask you is you were a professor back in the day, and now you're a professor
Yeah,
emeritus?
emeritus. Mhm.
Emeritus. Okay, I said that wrong. What is that? What does that mean?
Well, if this is an honorary position that universities bestow after when you retire. It's when
Hmm,
you don't actually leave the university, but you stop teaching, and you're still affiliated. Whatever you're doing can be appropriate to the university, supporting them in a sense like writing, publishing, this sort of thing.
nice, nice. So, I mean, okay, so but you've done so many different amazing things. How did you how did you know you were supposed to write a book though? I mean, how did that happen?
Well, I didn't hadn't really thought about it, but I had many, many stories I would tell to people around, and then they'd hear them and they'd say, "Hey, you ought to write a book." Well, that's been going on for a couple decades now, and I finally got around to doing it, and it turned out to be a lot of fun, just putting those stories together and uh, um, sharing them whenever I'd still share them to people when I,
Nice.
happen to meet with them. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what's the title? Eat or be eaten. What is this?
Well, it was I looked at the title that matched the stories. A lot of the stories were sort of entertaining stories about adventures of where I almost got eaten.
Oh,
And the other is the different ways people eat their food. There's a lot of little
wow.
traditions, habits, things that are uh, a sort of protocol with the meals,
Hmm.
things that don't we don't normally think about here in the States. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Eat or be eaten. That
Yeah.
yeah, that's threatening. Okay, so in your culture and in your travels, I'm sorry, uh, what has been the most surprising food related custom you've encountered? Like you say eat or be eaten. Was it like literally you were going to be eaten if you didn't eat?
No, not like that. These
Okay.
are sort of separate adventures. Because this
Ah,
book
okay.
is kind of like an adventure story too.
Oh, nice, nice. So tell me about some of your travels and about the food related customs that you've encountered. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Oh, okay. So yeah, go ahead and tell me about some of those cultures that you found was really interesting.
Yeah, well, I'll just start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Uh, m- uh, I joined the Peace Corps when I was quite young. I was only 20 years old, but it was quite a wake up for me in terms of the globe and the cultures around the world and different peoples, accepting of people's traditions and their habits. And once I did that, I realized that I had such a wonderful time. It was in Brazil, and
Hmm.
working as an agriculture extensionist, and just was a fabulous time. I learned Portuguese. I still speak it, and
Wow.
then following that, I went back to school and finished my degrees and became a professor. And then I was looking for a job, and there weren't any in the States at that time. And I had applied to this job in the Sudan at the University of Khartoum, and anyway, they offered me the job. and I went. They sent me a ticket for me and my two kids and my wife, and we were on our way, and had
Wow.
a great time in this place. It's kind of barren there, but environmentally it looks pretty stark because it's right on the edge of the Sahara Desert, and but it was the people were fabulous. I mean,
Mhm.
I just loved them. They were um, just so caring and very, very, very beautiful people.
Mm.
And so that
Wow.
was it. And a lot of their eating traditions, I got
Mhm.
used to those. And after that, came back to the States, and I had a period of time where I didn't do any particular long distance experiences. But then about in the late '90s, I had the opportunity to go to Papua New Guinea, which is quite different. See, I've had the uh, South America and then Africa,
Mhm.
and now Papua New Guinea, which is in
Wow.
the South Pacific. So
Mhm.
that was I lived there for 3 years, and I worked there as a in their university to expand the environmental consciousness among the different disciplines, and so that they begin thinking ecologically and that sort of thing.
Mm.
So that was a good one, and then I had the opportunity while I was there to work very intensely with one of the villages, and
Mm.
that's very memorial. I've written a lot of stuff about them.
Wow.
Um, and then after that, came back to this to my university in Indianapolis, and this is part of Indiana University, of course.
Mhm.
And I at that time we I went to uh, took uh, had a Fulbright scholarship or grant or whatever what you want to call it. But I went for a year to teach uh, in Mozambique
Mm.
at the University of Eduardo Manlani, so we'd call it.
Wow.
And I taught there for a year. Had a great time and a lot of stuff about the farming and things like what I
Wow.
call four-story agriculture, where they're not just farming one crop, but there's different elevations, different heights, and things like coconut trees at the top, and under that would be the orange trees and other fruit trees, and then under that would be like bananas and sugarcane maybe, and then
Wow.
underground you'd have peanuts and cassava and yams, those sorts of things. And after that, a few years later, I had a couple of semesters in Kenya, so those kept
Whoa.
going. And there's little pieces in there where I had some time in Costa Rica where we worked with endangered turtles, trying to save the eggs and uh, nurture them in that way, some way, so they could hatch and go out and propagate. And uh, just different place, different times, little short visits. Most of this,
Wow.
I'm talking about these big ones, and they're for you'll at least a year at a time. But there's a lot of little ones, maybe for 3 weeks, or a month, this sort of thing.
Wow.
Um, I, taught for a month in Saudi Arabia,
Mm.
and then did a lot of work in Costa Rica. Uh, Trying to think where else. Had a little call to go for a week in Cameroon, back in Africa again. So
Wow.
uh, these were all experiential things. And gave presentations
Hmm. My gosh. Did you did
everywhere.
okay, so did you experience um any different kind of farming like between all of the places that you've gone? Was the farming similar? Was it different? Did
Uh,
you have to relearn farming wherever you went?
Yes, had to relearn. The farming was very different. Everyone has a little difference, quite a bit of difference, and there's also a time gap here because when I first started this in the Peace Corps, it was in 1964,
Mm,
and I stayed there those 2 years. But things have changed a lot. Where I was working, there was a frontier area that had all people were just practicing slash and burn agriculture.
mm,
Today, it's a major livestock producing place. It produces most of the beef for Brazil, and the soybeans have moved in big time. So those are big changes that have happened. Uh, in New Guinea, we were talking about in many sense, very primitive place. New Guinea
mm,
is probably the last place on earth that will develop. I'm really feeling it shouldn't. We need it for the records to see how it really was in the past. 'Cause I'm not so sure development is a good thing.
No, I
uh,
don't think
you
so.
you lose a lot of the culture, and a lot of the little secrets these farmers have go by the wayside. And you go to see what they do with their land, and it's amazing.
Wow.
Um, so that's I was really intrigued with the farming in Sudan, where these farmers were on farming on the edge of the desert, and they
Oh,
had no, and they would still grow crops, and they might get one good crop in 5 years,
oh.
and they were able to use that one crop to feed them the other 5 years.
What?
Yes, they would, and
Oh
they
my
would bury it.
gosh.
Now, here's this picture you see here is that people eating in the Sudan.
Mm,
These are Sudanese sitting around a blanket on the ground, and these are all different dishes. They're very tasty, and they're all sitting there eating in around this circle
mm,
of men. Lots of bean dishes, meat dishes,
mhm,
mainly beef, chicken, that sort of thing. Occasionally, you'll have something else like a little bit of camel or something in there to eat,
mm,
and and one of the things they do, a very important tradition there is you only eat with your right hand.
mm.
So, and because your left hand is your nasty hand, and
Oh,
so and
okay.
and I think a lot of that stems from way back. I think there's even a reference to it in the Quran, and but uh, you don't touch anybody with your left hand, and you hardly use it. Uh, you clean yourself with it. So if I put it a little
Oh
bit bluntly
wow.
there, and
Okay, I got you.
and then
I understand. I understand.
yeah,
Wow. That is
so that
different.
so that was the way they ate. It was different, and
Mm.
much of Africa you're eating with your fingers. You
Yeah.
know, there's you don't have utensils, and so um, and I remember in South Africa, I would take advantage of my students in the sense that I'd find out where they I would go to visit them at their farms and go out with them. That was when I got to see things, and I also had somebody to look out for me, and
Mhm.
we go out and see what they were doing. Sometimes quite a distance. We were going to the south uh, of Sudan, which is now its own country called South Sudan, and
Mhm.
the we went into a village where they had what we they wanted to give me the best food, and they
Mm.
pulled out a big bowl full of roasted termites
Oh no.
stacked
Oh
up like
no.
in a little pyramid, and they sat down in front of me, uh, and everybody was standing around looking at it, sort of salivating. And I finally asked my student, "Hey, Patrick, what do I do now?" I was a little bit scared here. He said, "Well, you're the guest. Nobody will eat until you eat." And so I said, "Oh my, well, how do I start this?"
Oh
And
gosh.
he says, "Take a few off the top and put them in your mouth." Well, okay, I did that, and I held them in my mouth thinking I could spit them out sometime, just sort of in the front of my mouth. And these are roasted termites. They're the flying kind. They fly, and when they fly from these big mounds, and then
Oh
they
no.
they light a candle in the ground with a little indentation, and they burn their wings when they fly after at the candle, and ultimately uh, they fall, and then they collect the termites, and then you eat them. Well, anyway, as soon as I took that one little, I think by 3 or 4 termites in my mouth, I was just holding them. The rest of them dove into this like it was just going to get away from them. They wanted they did diving. It was like a delicacy, I guess, and I got so fascinated with watching them that I forgot I had something in my mouth, and I started to chew. And I found out why they liked them. They were salty.
Oh gosh.
And that's what the termites do is they go deep in the ground and they dig these minerals from underneath, which in the tropics, in the rainforest areas, you don't your water washes all the nutrients out of the soil, so they're really starving for things like salt and other minerals, and so this gave them a chance to make up and get some salt in their body. Uh, so I saw there's a good reason for what they're doing, and it's still a delicacy.
Mm,
This was in the 1970s, but I've been talking to people there that, oh no, that's a delicacy when we have that. So
mm,
it's so that was one of the things that I was very impressed with, and
yeah,
so
yeah,
different. Those are different foods. I remember uh,
yeah.
in Brazil, in the western Brazil, there's a big swamp there. It's probably the largest swamp on earth. It's called the Pantanal, and went down there. I was in the Peace Corps at that time. We went
Mm-hmm.
down we drove down there with a family, and we moved a family down there. They were going to spend the rainy season down on the Pantanal. I don't know why, but they had all their furniture and everything in the back of this big truck,
Mm.
and had to climb on top of the furniture to ride down there. And somebody had there was a lot of the Brazilians with us. Somebody found a bottle of alcohol. I guess they called it cachaça, which is a kind of Brazilian rum, and passed it around. The driver got plenty of it, and kept running off the road.
The
And
driver?
we had to get down and push it back on. By the time got there, we were pretty muddy, and so
Oh
we
my
jumped.
gosh.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
oh.
then when there's this little abandoned meander off the main river there, and it looked like a good place to clean up. The Brazilians got in, they get wet and get out and soap up. They jump back in and get washed off the soap. Well, this other American and I jumped in there, another volunteer, and we just jumped in and were enjoying it. We didn't get out. We just soaped up and got the soap off. And as we started walking out of there, and this little man came walking by and he says, "Hey, you were lucky this time. You never swim with piranhas without a swimming suit on." And oh, that was
Piranhas?
piranhas. You don't swim with them without a swimming suit, or at least men don't. And
Oh gosh.
and apparently, they don't. You have to normally you got to be bleeding for them to attack, but they do pick on soft, tender spots of the body once in a while.
Mm-mm.
But anyway, that was quite a sobering experience. And
You
the
think?
next day, the next day we went out there and went fishing in the same spot, and we caught a dozen piranha inside of an hour, or no, a half hour actually. But that was another challenge. How do you catch the piranha? So, yeah, so that was a situation that was another
Oh my
interesting one.
gosh. Oh
Uh,
wow.
so
Wow. And
these,
all of this is in your book?
yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So I talk about adventures with wolverines. This is back in Colorado, up
What?
in the high Rockies, and so that was one of the stories. I talk about camel's milk. This was
Mm?
out in the Sahel of Sudan. We found a camel driver there, and he was fattening cattle. I mean, excuse me, camels, and he had this. They would didn't have any water, and so the camels got their water out of the little succulent berries off these bushes. And then he didn't have any water; he couldn't do that. But what he did was he collected the camel's milk and he drank that instead.
Mm.
As we came running up there, we went driving by in a car, and he came running up and stopped us and said, "You got any water?" Well, yeah. We stopped. We had a big old 5-gallon container. We gave him a glass, he downed that, and downed another, and down another. When's the last time you had a drink of water? Oh, about 6 weeks. And we said, well, how'd you survive like that? Well, I've got camel's milk. So anyway,
Oh
I was curious.
wow.
I was curious about it, and I had to taste it, I guess, but
Did
that
you
taste
taste it?
that taste was enough, though. I didn't. I kind of regretted it for the next 2 or 3 days, and
I'm sorry. What did it taste like? I mean, compare it to what?
it was just rancid, like rancid milk. Yeah,
Oh, camel's milk is like rancid. I mean, coming out of the
No,
camel.
no, 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 no. This was he had it in a little bag and it already sitting
Oh,
there for a while. I'm sure he just had it when he was getting pretty tired of it, I'm sure, but
yeah.
that's all he had. So he had a little kind of a leather sack. He kept it on his hip. There was a and he would just refill it
Mm.
when he needed to. And
Okay, no, 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 no,
and
no.
he was fattening camels like they would cattle, and then they were sending them to Egypt where they would eat them. They
Mm,
wouldn't eat them in Sudan, but they were uh, into the probably in the sort of middle lower class communities of Egypt.
right.
And
Wow. So, I
yeah,
mean, your storytelling is amazing. Do you think that storytelling is something to be admired when it comes to food and culture? I mean, being able to maybe even like what you did, put it in the book.
yeah. Well, I think storytelling is a major way of communicating things. People remember the stories
Hmm.
rather than put down a bunch of statistics and this and that and this the story is something that sticks with you
It
and
does. I'll never
and
forget the
so
rancid camel milk.
yeah. Yeah, one little corollary I just forgot to tell you about with the piranha story there.
Oh my
My son
goodness.
my son heard that story and when he was about 6 years old and he says, "Hey Dad, you were really lucky when you in that water those piranhas." I said,
Hmm.
"Hey Alex, you were the lucky one."
Yeah. Oh
And
yes.
so um
Oh
so
yes.
I mean, those are the kind of things that
Oh
we
wow.
you can share that and it gets your point across.
Yeah.
I was looking at, see, you compare our farming with the States. We have all this high technology, and we're
Right.
getting such precision agriculture here in
Mhm.
Indiana. We call ourselves the uh, Midwest, the Grain Belt. And, oh man, uh, giant tractors, uh, huge acreages. And
Mhm.
look, compare that to a farmer in these little countries where they might have, 1 acre and they're
Yeah.
able to survive off of that. There's
Mhm.
all these little things they do. One of the things that's really interesting is how they mix the crops together.
Mm.
They, there's a lot of in that there's a lot of ecology there because these different plants serve each other. There's a lot of,
Mm.
I guess we call that symbiosis, where
Mhm.
one plant provides legumes provide nitrogen for the other plants,
Mhm.
and like the one of the original crops when we did that in the states, but not the states with let's say when the pilgrims came, the Indians who welcomed them had
Mhm.
this tradition of what they grew corn and
Right.
then they had beans, and the beans would climb up the corn stalk and get to the
Mhm.
sun. But usually they grow the corn first, harvest it, and leave the stalk standing, and then then the beans would take over. And then they
Mm.
had squash, the same thing. All three of these together growing kind of had then they could just keep growing it in the same spot.
Mm.
Because what we do is we can't we take everything out of the soil in our with our crops
Mhm.
and all the nutrients or whatever, and we make up for it with all these chemicals.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we can produce tremendous amounts of food that way, and but you can see what the kind of the big difference there in our traditions of farming. And
Wow.
I went up and visited the farms in Iceland. Did you believe they have farms in Iceland?
Well, yeah, I do because Iceland is actually green.
Yes, you're right. It is green, and
Yeah.
particularly along the coast, because the interior is too higher elevation. It's
Yeah.
not much higher, but maybe 500 feet higher, and it gets too cold there. And but they're farming along the coast, and they told me they had mixed agriculture. That means
Mhm.
livestock and crops. And
Yeah.
I said, well, what kind of crops you grow? Hay. I said, yeah. Anything else? Hay. And then,
Well.
okay, what, okay, then what livestock do you have? Sheep.
Yeah.
Same thing, sheep. And we
Yeah.
feed the hay to the sheep. And so there was the whole culture was around the sheep and growing hay to feed them. And
Wow.
so it was very interesting. That was, in fact, it's that lamb is what most of they eat. That's probably the third most important part of their economy
Mm-hmm.
after tourism and after fishing. So, yeah,
Wow.
so those are those are all very different climates, different kinds of places. So, dealing in that in the tropical rainforest and moving into the savannas where
Mm-hmm.
I I was with in Mozambique and in Brazil, and these are different kinds of environments that you can
Wow.
experience, and of course, back in the States.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about AI? Do you think that AI is going to revolutionize the farming industry in any kind of way? Maybe with information, results, um, different farming practices. I mean, and are you going to write another book because of all of these changes that might be making because of technology?
Yeah, I think so. I might do something like that, but the AI is slowly taking over. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're making the machines smarter and smarter. They've been doing it all along, and it's been happening. We never call it AI, but it's been happening, for the
Yeah.
last 30 years. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
as they begin adding, finding new ways, labor-saving devices, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, machines that start making decisions for you. And uh, so, no, that's going to keep expanding. It's in some ways it's a little scary because I find that. Uh, I mean, I don't know. I don't find that it's interesting to hear about it, but my real love is to see the traditional farmers, those people on the soil who are still putting their hands in the soil and planting and harvesting and all that sort of thing. And they have all these little secrets about how they plant and whatever. And that's what I say. It's sad to see that go away because if
Yeah.
they once eventually they get taken over by the big
Mm-hmm.
operators and the little things, how they made that 1 acre feed their family year round,
Wow.
constantly.
That is
And
amazing. That is
so,
amazing. Wow. Wow.
yeah,
Dr. Bing, I should say Dr. Bing,
but
Bine,
Bine,
right? Bine,
yeah,
Dr. Bine. I think that what you have done is just an amazing thing, and being in the Peace Corps is like one of those things that a lot of people don't realize that they can do, and the traveling is just amazing, and then learning all of these things
yeah.
and putting it in a book in a story format, and the hilariousness of you swimming in a piranha infested place. Yeah, that right there just took the cake for me, and of course the termites. Yeah.
Mhm.
But thank- that was amazing. I want to thank you so much for being on the show, and I want to thank everybody listening today. Our show is being sponsored today by Dr. Robert Bine. He is our guest. He is our sponsor today, and I want to thank him so much for being here. Thank you so much for just being here and sharing your experience with us. I do have the QR code where people can find the book, so you can go ahead and check out that QR code right there on the screen, or you can go ahead and go to Amazon. I make sure that everything is right there. Eat or Be Eaten by Dr. Rick Bine. I want to make sure also that you guys understand. Look at me all the way down here. I want you guys to understand that books are an amazing thing. It's a part of someone's life. And Doctor, what do you say to people who may have not written their book yet and they don't think it's interesting? But I mean, I think all books are. Tell me what you think.
Well, I think it starts with their stories. And as they begin honing their story, they tell it again and again. And pretty soon they've got it down to where it's entertaining. And then you can start writing it a little bit. Write this little part, write another. And, it's not long before you've got a story together. And then add some few more stories and it just and make it fun to do the writing.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you write this book, by the way? I mean, I know you were on all of these adventures. Did you do this after you came back? I mean, was this something recent that you've done?
Well, I started writing these things about 20 years ago, and the little stories I'd write them and just you know keep it around, and then I'd write another one, and there wasn't any hurry. I'd actually did some of it on a I have a YouTube channel that one
Hmm.
can go to. They if they Google Rick Bine and then I call it YouTube. Well, uh, I'm trying to think what they call it.
Mm.
uh, just my name and in YouTube, you'll find it there. And I think we called it Traveling Farmer. Traveling Farmer.
Mm.
So that would be a title there. So there's about 20 some stories there, and they're narrated. So I'm just doing that then. And then after that, I decided let's get this book together and write it down. So, and that's what this is about. So many of the same stories are told or narrated in the YouTube.
Wow. Wow. That is amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show. I just appreciate you so very much. And this is just, wow, the stories that you've told, and I'm sure there are more.
Oh yeah, just
Okay,
scratch the
termites got me.
we scratch the surface.
Wow, termites and camel rancid milk and traveling and uh, swimming with piranhas. I mean, you are the quintessential daredevil, if I may say so. Thank
Well,
you so
maybe accidentally Daredevil.
much. The unwilling participant, I should say, right? Oops.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Doctor. And thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Don't forget to dare to be different. But most of all, don't forget to go to the comment section below or the description box below, wherever you may be watching. And go ahead and scan that QR code in or get that link that we're going to be putting there and go and check out this book for yourself. You want amazing, fun food stories and stories about culture and all different kinds of stories about piranhas and swimming with them, then you need to get this book. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to dare to be different. Until next time, guys. Bye.